I knew I was in trouble when Cal asked me to kill the transponder and kept one hand on the flare gun. It was July of 2018 on the North Carolina coast. I knew Cal through a marina outside Morehead City. We were not close. He was the guy who always had a boat project and needed somebody to help move it. He called on a Thursday and said he had bought a 31-foot cabin cruiser near Oriental. He wanted help taking it toward Cape Lookout, then to a private dock farther south. $300 cash and a ride back the next morning. I had the weekend free, so I agreed. The boat was second wind, old and white with a faded blue stripe, and smelled like diesel and wet rope under lemon cleaner. The cabin carpet felt damp through my shoes. We left Oriental a little after noon. The water inside the Sound was flat, with storms building inland. Cal seemed normal, just distracted. He checked the gauges every few minutes and talked to the engine under his breath. 40 minutes out, I heard 3 hard knocks from below. Not engine noise, 3 separate hits. I looked toward the cabin steps. Cal kept his eyes ahead. Toolbox. What? Steel box in the forward berth. Forgot to strap it down. I said he should secure it. He laughed. It weighs a ton. It's fine. A few minutes later, it happened again. 2 knocks, then a scrape along the inside wall. I knew how loose gear sounded. A toolbox shifted with the roll. This had a rhythm to it. Still, the boat was full of junk. A cabinet could have come open. A fender could be rolling under a bunk. I let it go. Around 3, Cal told me to take the wheel while he checked a fuel line. He went below for less than a minute. While he was down there, I heard a voice. It was too muffled to understand, like somebody trying to talk through cloth. Cal came back carrying a red shop rag. "Who was that?" I asked. "What?" I heard someone. "Radio." "There isn't a radio on." He pointed at an old speaker. "It picks up Coast Guard chatter when the wiring gets hot." It made no sense. He knew it made no sense. We left it there. Near Adams Creek, Cal said we would stop for ice, then changed his mind. After that, I watched him more carefully. He would not let me go below. Every time I stepped toward the cabin, he called me back. I said I needed the head, and he told me the pump was broken. I thought he might be hiding drugs. Cal dealt in cash and knew people who moved boats at night. That would explain why he was nervous. It would not explain the voice. Near 5, we entered a narrow stretch with marsh on both sides. The air smelled like hot mud. Deer flies kept landing on my arms. Cal was steering, so I went aft for water. That was when I saw the blood. It was beside a cabin vent, a dark smear about the length of my hand. 2 drops sat below it. I touched one, still tacky. Cal saw me and crossed the deck so fast, the boat drifted toward the channel edge. "Fish," he said. "What fish?" "Spanish mackerel. Previous owner cleaned one there." "This is fresh." He wiped the smear with the shop rag. "Rust water," he said, "from the vent." "You just said fish." He stopped, then smiled. "Fine." I cut my hand loading gear. His hands had no cut. The boat bumped over a wake. From below came one heavy kick against the cabin wall. Cal turned toward it and went below, shutting the door behind him. I heard a scuffle, a grunt, then silence. When he came back, sweat had darkened his collar. "Who's down there?" "No one." "Cargo doesn't talk." Cal stepped close enough that I could smell cigarettes on his breath. "Quit inventing problems. We're a few hours from the dock. You get paid, I get my boat moved, everybody goes home." The way he said everybody stuck with me. I had 1 weak bar of service. The VHF was mounted beside him, and the keys were under his hand. I waited for a chance. Near Beaufort, a sightseeing ferry crossed ahead. I watched people 50 yards away and thought about shouting. But what would I say? There might be a man tied up below, or there might be some dumb explanation. Cal would reach me first. I stayed quiet. We turned east instead of following the marked route south. I checked Google Maps. We were heading toward open water north of Shackleford Banks. This isn't the way to a marina. Shortcut. There are no docks out there. Private harbor. He reached for my phone. I put it in my pocket. The sun was low. We passed the last fishing boats near the inlet, and the water grew rougher. The knocking began again. Bang. Pause. Bang. Cal pushed the throttle forward. The knocks came faster. He shouted toward the cabin, "Cut it out!" Then he realized what he had said. "Toolbox acting up?" I asked. Cal pulled an orange flare gun from under the helm. "We're close," he said. "Sit in that seat." "Who is he?" "You don't need to know." "Is he hurt?" "Sit down." I sat. For 20 minutes I watched the shoreline get smaller. Cell service vanished. The only land ahead was a low strip of dunes. Cal pointed at the electronics panel. "Turn off the AIS." He meant the transponder broadcasting our position. "Why?" "The harbor doesn't want traffic tracked." "That's not a thing." He lifted the flare gun. "Turn it off." I reached for the panel and hit the cabin light switch by mistake. Cal cursed and leaned over. That gave me 2 seconds. I pulled the ignition keys and threw them over the side. The engine kept running. Pulling the key did not stop an old diesel. Cal hit me in the mouth with the flare gun. I fell into the passenger seat. Blood filled my mouth. He grabbed my shirt. I swung and missed. With nobody at the wheel, the boat turned hard. Cal shoved me into the rail. The flare gun slipped from his hand. I saw the yellow emergency beacon mounted beside the cabin door. I lunged for it. Cal caught my ankle and dragged me down. My chin hit the deck. I tore the beacon free and pulled the activation tab. A red light began flashing. Cal grabbed for it. He slammed my wrist against the wall until my fingers opened, then raised the beacon over his head to throw it. The cabin door burst outward. A man came through on his knees. His wrists were tied with gray tape and cord. More tape hung from his cheek. He had no shoes, and one eye was swollen almost shut. He held a short metal pipe. Cal turned. The man swung once. The pipe hit Cal above the ear. Cal dropped into the helm seat. The beacon fell but stayed aboard, still flashing. The man looked at me. "Kill the engine." "Keys are gone." He crawled to the controls and pulled the fuel shutoff. The engine sputtered down. All I could hear was water hitting the hull and Cal breathing through his nose. I found a folding knife and cut the man loose. His name was Wade. That was all he gave me. He had a cut behind one ear and dried blood down his neck. "How long were you in there?" "Since before sunrise." "Why did he take you?" Wade looked at Cal, then toward the dark strip of land. "We need to leave." Cal's hand was moving against the deck. At the stern was an old inflatable Avon dinghy with a small outboard. We lowered it while the cruiser drifted broadside to the waves. Wade opened a locker and handed me a red life jacket. There was another one underneath. Russell was written across the chest in black marker. "Who's Russell?" Wade froze. Cal laughed from the deck. Wade stepped toward him with the pipe. I caught Wade's arm. "Leave him." Cal rolled onto his back. "You don't know what he is." Wade pulled away. "Get in the boat." "What island?" I asked Cal. He smiled at Wade. Wade started the dinghy on the third pull. I grabbed water, a handheld VHF, and the beacon. I threw the flare gun into the cabin before climbing down. As we pushed away, Cal dragged himself to the rail and called Wade by another name. Wade did not react. He opened the throttle. Second wind faded behind us, rolling without power. We aimed for the nearest beach. The dinghy slapped against the chop. Spray hit my split lip and burned. Wade's hands shook on the tiller. I asked if Russell had been on the boat. No answer. I asked what Cal meant when he said I did not know what Wade was. Wade said, "Cal talks." That was all he gave me. We reached a beach near Cape Lookout after dark. The lighthouse beam passed over the dunes. We dragged the dinghy above the wash and followed a boardwalk toward a ranger station. A park worker found us. Deputies came with an ambulance. A Coast Guard crew arrived after them. They separated us. I told the story 3 times. The last person was a man in plain clothes who never named his agency. They photographed my mouth and took the beacon. When I asked about Cal, nobody answered. When I asked about Wade, the man said, "We'll handle him." I saw Wade near the ambulance with a blanket around his shoulders. A deputy was on the phone while another searched a black backpack. Wade looked across the parking lot at me. He put one finger to his lips. About an hour later, a deputy asked where Wade had gone. I thought he was joking. They searched the beach and nearby trails. By sunrise, they had not found him. Second wind was located the next afternoon east of the inlet. Cal was not aboard. The cabin had been cleaned out. The cord and tape were gone. Nobody would mention the blood. The name Russell had been scrubbed from the spare life jacket. A detective called twice that week. On the second call, he asked whether Wade had said why Cal was taking him to the island. I said no. After a pause, he asked, Did he tell you which island? I said no again. 2 months later, an envelope appeared in my mailbox with no return address. Inside was a key from the second wind ignition ring. The yellow tag had Cal's handwriting on one side. On the other side, someone had written one word, Russell. One thing that scared me was not the open display case. It was the fact that the glass door was still moving. In November 2012, I worked nights at a natural history museum in Chicago. I checked temperature logs, walked the halls after closing, and met crews at the loading dock. Lake wind pushed through bad seals in the service corridors. That night, the last school group left around 6. By 8, the galleries were in security mode, with only every third light on. The dinosaur hall looked like storage with bones in it. 2 guards were on duty. Dana was at the west entrance. Ray watched cameras downstairs. We carried Motorola radios and checked in at set points. A little after 9, I passed a case of Arctic birds and saw its glass door ease inward. It moved half an inch and stopped. The case was supposed to be locked. I checked the latch. The keyhole was scratched around the edge, and the air inside smelled dry and chemical. One label had been knocked flat. I radioed Ray. Did maintenance open case 4B? No work order, he said. Don't touch it. I'll pull the camera. A minute later, he came back. Camera misses that corner. Check your keys. My main ring was clipped inside my jacket, but the smaller ring was gone. Those keys opened staff passages, freight elevators, and the locked controls for a few mechanical displays. I had used them less than 20 minutes earlier. I figured I had left them in the climate office. That was the boring answer, and boring answers are usually right in museums. People set things down while carrying boxes. Old locks shift, heat comes on and cases move. The climate office was locked. I reached for the missing ring before remembering that it opened the office. Ray, I need you up here. West lobby alarm just tripped. Dana's checking it. Give me 5. While I waited, I heard a thin scraping sound to my right. Not behind the office door, inside the wall. Museums have narrow spaces behind the galleries, so crews can reach lights and cases. I knew there was a chase behind that wall, but its entrance was across the hall. The scraping stopped. My missing keys slid out from under the climate office door. They came slowly, pushed from the other side. The ring turned once on the tile and stopped against my shoe. I backed away and called Ray. My radio popped with static. Then a man's voice said, very quietly, "You should have stayed downstairs." It was not Ray. The voice was clear, which meant he had one of our radios. I picked up the keys and moved toward the rotunda. The lights over the mammal displays went out behind me, one fixture at a time. The darkness followed at walking speed. I ran. The public doors were locked after closing, but staff could leave through the west lobby or loading dock. I headed west because Dana was supposed to be there. As I crossed the dinosaur hall, metal wheels rolled above the ceiling. An old storm display used a motorized fake tree. Its public controls were disconnected, but maintenance could still run it. The tree swung across the walkway. It smashed a bench and blocked the shortest route to the lobby. The trunk was foam over steel, heavy enough to break a leg if it caught me. My radio clicked. "Wrong way," the man said. I took the bird hall instead. Halfway through, fire curtains dropped from the ceiling and hit the floor hard enough to shake dust from a vent. Their controls were inside staff areas. I tried 911 on my old iPhone. One bar appeared, then vanished. The building's stone core killed reception. I could get a signal near the east windows, but another curtain blocked that route. Ray came over the radio. "Where are you?" Before I answered, the other voice cut in. "She's by birds." I looked up. A vent grill above the exhibit had been removed. 2 screws lay on the carpet. Behind the opening was a dark space wide enough for someone to watch through. I set the radio on the floor and entered the staff passage behind the birds. It was 3 feet wide, with painted panels on one side and concrete on the other. It smelled like hot wiring and mouse droppings. Small access doors opened into the backs of cases, each labeled in black marker. Someone entered behind me. I did not see a light. I heard the metal door flex shut. The passage split near an old freight lift. One route returned to the rotunda. The other sloped down to basement storage. A chain had been looped through the rotunda door handles. Only the ramp was open. He was not chasing me at random. He was giving me one direction. I went down because standing there was worse. The concrete felt cold through my shoes. At the bottom, boxed teaching models sat on rolling shelves. Plastic teeth showed through a cracked lid. The security phone near fossil storage had no dial tone. Its cable had been cut behind the box. A door slammed above me, then something heavy began to roll. Several large exhibit pieces were stored on wheeled platforms. A full-size fiberglass bison came out of the dark and crossed the corridor. The platform weighed hundreds of pounds. I stepped back before it pinned me against a pipe. A hand appeared behind it and released the brake. I saw fingers and part of a navy sleeve. I ran into specimen prep, locked the door, and checked the second exit. A cable had been tied from its push bar to the stair rail outside. The door opened 2 inches and stopped. Steel counters lined the room. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, one tube blinking every few seconds. My radio, still upstairs, crackled through a vent. "Come out," the man said. "You can't stay in there." I hit a metal tray against the counter, then threw it into the sink. While the noise bounced around the room, I climbed up and pushed open a ceiling panel. I could not fit between the ducts, but I saw a junction box labeled Gallery Audio. A central panel could start audio descriptions in several halls. Its relay was across the corridor, with a backup beside the public elevator upstairs. The prep room handle moved, the lock held. Then the light went out. I waited in the dark. The fluorescent tube cooled with tiny clicks. A key entered the lock. He had a master. I stood behind the door. He came in holding a flashlight low and a radio near his chin. He wore an old security jacket with the museum patch removed. I recognized him from an old break room photo. His name was Glenn. Glenn had worked security before I started nights. Dana once said he was fired after entering restricted storage without logging it. Nobody had mentioned that he kept keys. He swept the light across the sinks. I slipped through the doorway behind him. Glenn grabbed my jacket, but the fabric tore at the shoulder. I hit the floor, kicked the door into his arm, and ran. The bison blocked the direct route. I squeezed behind it, scraped my palm on a bolt, and reached the electrical room. The first lock opened. The second had already been broken and replaced with a latch. Rows of gray cabinets hummed in the heat. The air tasted metallic. I found the relay panel and flipped the breaker marked Gallery Daylight. Nothing happened. A red indicator showed manual lockout. Glenn hit the door from outside. The latch jumped. The backup control beside the public elevator was 2 floors up. I left through a cable tunnel at the rear of the room and reached the old boiler stairs. Glenn's flashlight appeared behind me before I made the landing. I shut a steel gate between us and jammed my main keyring into the track. He pulled hard. The keys bent, but held. I took the stairs. The main floor was almost dark. Emergency strips glowed along the baseboards. Glenn was forcing the gate below, and somewhere past the rotunda, Ray was shouting my name. I reached the elevator panel and opened it with the small access key. Inside were 2 switches, Daylight All, Audio Tour Test. I turned both. Every gallery light came on at once. Display spots lit the cases. Work lights behind painted scenes exposed seams visitors never saw. Then, hundreds of audio units started through the building. A woman described dinosaur bones in the rotunda. A man talked about lake ecology near the east stairs. Other tracks began halfway through, paused during testing. The halls filled with overlapping voices. Glenn came through the fire door below me and stopped. He had been following footsteps, doors, and radio noise. Now sound came from every direction. I stayed still behind the elevator panel. He turned toward mammals, changed direction, then pulled the grill from a staff vent beside the south stairs. He climbed in feet first. Metal buckled. Glenn shouted once. The vent dropped several inches and jammed between the first and second floors. His legs disappeared into the wall, but he could not move forward or back. Ray and Dana reached me less than 2 minutes later. Police and firefighters opened the wall and removed Glenn alive. He kept asking them to shut off the audio guides. Behind a closed exhibit on the 3rd floor, police found blankets, canned food, copied keys, batteries, and a charger wired into a lighting circuit. They also found a canvas work bag marked Luis. Luis was a night cleaner who had stopped showing up 3 weeks earlier. Management said he quit without collecting his last check. In Glenn's space, police found Luis's CTA card, work gloves, and the cheap silver watch he wore on every shift. The next afternoon, workers opened more of the service wall. There was a folding chair behind the Arctic bird case, facing the narrow gap around the glass door. From that chair, Glenn could see the whole hallway where I had been standing when the keys slid out. When Professor Adrian asked me for a former student's home address, I thought he had misspoken. The second time, he was inside a locked university archive at 1:13 in the morning. I worked nights in a university records annex in Madison, Wisconsin, in October 2015. It was under an old building downhill from Bascom Hill, a few blocks from State Street. Once the custodians left, I was usually alone below ground. I scanned enrollment cards and returned files to compact shelving. The shelves sat on tracks and moved when you pressed a button. Only one aisle could be open at a time. When the motors ran, the grind came up through the concrete floor. Each aisle had base sensors and red stop bars. If anything blocked the path, the shelves were supposed to stop. We were told never to enter a closing aisle. Most nights I worked until 2, with local radio in one earbud. The annex smelled like paper dust and warm scanner plastic. My supervisor, Karen, called it quiet time. She meant no students were at the desk. Adrian first came in on a Tuesday afternoon. He taught on the other side of campus. I recognized him from a faculty newsletter. He was in his 50s, with short gray hair and narrow glasses. He watched me enter his request. He wanted the file of Emily, who had graduated in 2004. That was not automatically suspicious. Faculty requested old records for reviews or research. The problem was his reason: departmental follow-up. Emily had not been in his department. Karen asked what he needed. "She took 2 of my seminars," he said. "I'm reconnecting with former students." Karen explained that contact information was restricted. Adrian nodded. "I only need to confirm where she went after graduation." Karen gave him grades and course history. No address. He took notes for 20 minutes and left. 2 days later, he requested Rachel's file, then Dana's. Both were women who had graduated years earlier and taken a class with him. Neither request listed current university business. I figured he was building an alumni list and filling out the forms badly. Faculty often assumed their ID opened every door. Karen rejected the next request and emailed his department administrator. After that, Adrian stopped coming during the day. Requests appeared in the online queue after midnight. He could place them remotely, though staff had to approve them. His notes got shorter: former advisee, then urgent. One request was for Leah, who had graduated that spring. I remembered correcting her record in June. Her file still contained a forwarding address in Madison that should have been removed. I marked the request restricted and sent it to Karen. The next night, Adrian called the archive desk at 11:40. "Is Leah's file ready?" "It's pending review." I heard a keyboard clicking on his end. "I was told it would be available tonight. No one here would have told you that. You have the box downstairs." I looked at the request screen. The internal code showed a shelf number, but patrons could not see it. "Who gave you the location?" He ignored me. "I only need 1 page." I told him to call Karen in the morning. "This is time sensitive," he said. "The restriction still applies." He hung up. I checked the door monitor. The annex had an elevator and a staff stairwell by the loading dock. Both required keycard access after 10. The screen showed an empty lobby and a wet line from a mop bucket. Around midnight, rain started tapping the narrow windows near the workroom ceiling. I finished scanning a box of student newspapers and went into the stacks. The fluorescent lights came on one section at a time, with a dry buzz. Leah's file was in row 18. I pulled it to remove the forwarding form. Her address was on West Dayton, near the Kohl Center. I sealed the card in a red privacy envelope and locked it in Karen's drawer. Then the elevator bell rang. During the day, I barely heard it. At 1:13, it carried through the whole annex. Adrian was standing in the lobby when I stepped out of the stacks. The doors closed behind him. He wore a dark raincoat with water on the shoulders. His faculty ID was clipped to his belt, though normal faculty cards did not work down there after hours. I stayed behind the locked glass door. "Who let you in?" "I need Leah's forwarding address." "The archive is closed." He held up a black iPhone with a cracked corner. "I drove across town because your office failed to process a routine request. You need to leave." His small smile disappeared. "Open the door." I backed toward the desk phone. Before I reached it, the lock clicked and the reader flashed green. Adrian pulled the door open. Later, campus police found his ID had been added to an after-hours access group used by department chairs. No one admitted approving it. He came inside and shut the door. "I'm calling campus police." That would be an overreaction. Rainwater dripped from his coat onto the tile. Up close, he smelled like wet wool and peppermint gum. I dialed the campus non-emergency number. I still thought an angry professor would leave once another employee spoke to him. Adrian reached over and pressed the switch hook, ending the call. "Give me the address." I moved away from the desk. Leah's folder was on top of a cart beside the stacked door. I had removed the address, but he saw her name on the tab. I grabbed it and went into the stacks. The door locked behind me. I heard Adrian try the handle, then a beep. He had access there too. The room was about 60 feet long. Only row 18 was open. The other shelves were pressed together, with narrow seams between them. The service exit was behind row 24. To reach it, I had to open that aisle, which meant closing row 18. Adrian entered the room. "Stop making this difficult," he called. His voice reflected off the metal. I could not place him. I pressed the button for row 24. The motors started. Row 18 closed behind me, while row 24 opened near the rear wall. The shelves moved slowly. I slipped through the next gap before it vanished, and kept going along the narrow space at the ends of the rows. Adrian followed the motor noise. His shoes scraped across the tracks. Then the shelves stopped. He had hit a red bar. For a few seconds, I heard only the rain and the fan inside the control cabinet. "Where are you going?" he asked. I reached row 24 and squeezed inside. Boxes rose almost to the ceiling. At the far end was a gray door marked "Mechanical Access." It opened into a utility corridor, but I needed the key ring on my belt. I started toward it. A shadow crossed the aisle behind me. Adrian stepped into row 24. He had removed his raincoat and folded it over one arm. He looked like he was arriving for office hours. "Give me the folder." I backed toward the mechanical door. "I know what you think this is," he said. "You don't understand the context." I did not answer. My shoulder hit the door. I pulled the keyring loose, dropped it, and heard it slide under the bottom shelf. Adrian moved faster. I crouched and reached beneath the shelf. My fingertips found the ring. He was close enough that I could hear him breathing through his nose. Beside the door was a secondary control panel for maintenance. Karen had shown me how it worked after a sensor failure. It could close all unused aisles in service mode as long as someone held a key in the switch. I inserted the key and turned it. The panel lit amber. Adrian stopped. I pressed close all. The shelf beside him began to move. He looked at it, then tried to step back, but another section was moving from the other side. He shoved his raincoat toward the base sensor. The shelf paused, reversed a few inches, then started again when the coat slipped clear. "Turn it off." I kept the key turned. The gap narrowed to 4 feet. He pushed both hands against the upright. "Turn it off!" I let it close until he had to stand sideways. Then I hit the emergency stop. The shelves locked. Adrian was trapped between two sections without being crushed. He could move his arms, but he could not turn or reach the controls. Leah's folder lay near his shoes. He began yelling that I had assaulted him. I unlocked the mechanical door and entered the utility corridor. It was cold and smelled like damp concrete. I shut the door, ran past pipes and electrical cabinets, and came out by the loading dock stairs. My phone had no signal below ground. It connected halfway up the first flight, and I called 911. Campus police found Adrian in the same position. He had kicked at the bottom boxes, but the shelving bases were solid. Officers photographed everything before releasing him. At first, he claimed I had trapped him over a records dispute. Then police searched his car. They found printed MapQuest directions and a notebook of apartment numbers. There were envelopes addressed to former students. Leah's West Dayton address was already written down, with a question mark beside the unit. The university put Adrian on leave that week. After investigators contacted former students, several women responded. Emily said he had appeared outside her workplace after she moved to Milwaukee. Rachel had changed her number because he called from campus extensions. Dana said packages had been left at her apartment without a return address. None of them knew about the others. Karen removed the remaining forwarding forms from old files. My shift was moved to daytime, and the access system was replaced. The last time I saw Adrian was through the glass doors of a county building the next spring. He sat beside an attorney, staring at a folder on his lap. It was red, the same kind we used for restricted records.